So, I, 16 male at the time, was part of this grand, government-organized student trip, a program meant to bring together bright young minds from different districts. Sounds prestigious, right? Well, in reality, it felt more like a social experiment where a bunch of teenagers who didn't know each other were thrown into buses and trains and sent off on an adventure. Now, I was one of the quiet ones. The kind of kid who prefers to sit in a corner, mind his own business, and avoid unnecessary social interaction. But my fellow district mates? Oh boy. They were on an entirely different wavelength. These guys were extreme extroverts, borderline overenthusiastic, borderline creepy. It was like they were on a mission to set a world record for fastest relationship formed on public transport. By the time we got on the train, they had already pulled off something unbelievable. They had girlfriends within 24 hours. I mean, we hadn't even reached our destination, and these guys were out here acting like they were starring in some teen romance movie. Flirting, exchanging numbers, whispering sweet nothings, it was wild. Meanwhile, I was sitting by the window, pretending to admire the scenery, wondering how people could socialize so effortlessly while I struggled to even order food at a restaurant. After a long and chaotic train ride, we finally reached our hotel, a pretty fancy 4-star place. For a government trip, this was surprisingly luxurious. I was expecting some shady dormitory-style housing. But nope, we got actual decent rooms, 3 students per room. Things were looking good. The next morning, after our scheduled sightseeing, something unexpected happened. One of the guys from our district approached me and my roommates with a request that made me question humanity. He had brought a girl to our room and, with the utmost confidence, asked if they could have some alone time there. I, being the reserved, rule-following person I was, immediately said no. I mean, come on, this was a shared room. But my 2 roommates? They looked at each other, shrugged, and said, why not a majority rule? I was outvoted. Defeated, I left the room, wandering the hotel halls like a lost soul, questioning my life choices. I sat in the lobby, scrolling through my phone, contemplating whether I should report this to the teachers or just let natural consequences do their thing. After about 30 minutes, the door finally opened, and the guy walked out, looking way too proud of himself. But something was off. He had suddenly developed a very strong attachment to a scarf. Yes, a scarf. In summer. Indoors. In an air-conditioned hotel. At first, I didn't think much of it until I walked back into the room and noticed something horrifying. On the bed was a curly hair. And not just any curly hair. That type of curly hair. Loudly crying face, I froze. My innocent brain was not prepared for this level of visual evidence. I backed away slowly like I had just witnessed a crime scene. For the rest of the trip, the guy refused to take off his scarf. Even when we went out in broad daylight, under the burning sun, this guy was draped in fabric like he was a 19th century poet suffering from heartbreak. At that point, I knew something had happened, but I wasn't about to ask questions, now. Everything seemed to be going suspiciously well for the guy. No teachers had caught on, and he and the girl continued their government trip romance. But then he made a rookie mistake. In an attempt to impress the girl, he decided to buy her a chocolate. Instead of delivering it himself like a normal person, he handed it to a waiter and asked him to deliver it to her room. He probably thought this was some grand romantic gesture, except the waiter was an absolute snitch. The guy hadn't considered one important factor: waiters in hotels report everything to the management. The moment the chocolate exchange was requested, the waiter went straight to the teachers. And let me tell you, the teachers took this very seriously. What followed was an intense room inspection. Teachers barged into every room, flipping mattresses, checking suitcases, interrogating students like they were detectives solving a high-profile crime. They didn't find any incriminating evidence. But then, they found his diary, and inside, a full-fledged romantic monologue. I kid you not, this guy had written an entire Bollywood-level confession of love. It started with "Mui pyar ho gaya," I have fallen in love, and went on with dramatic lines about how this girl had changed his life. I wouldn't be surprised if there were song lyrics in there too. The teachers lost it. They didn't need any further proof. The ruling was made on the spot: boys and girls would be strictly separated for the rest of the trip, and just like that, the carefree, flirt-filled trip turned into an academic boot camp. New seating arrangements were made. Hotel floors were segregated. Teachers suddenly became bodyguards, standing outside rooms at night to prevent any further interactions, and the guy? He spent the rest of the trip in absolute shame. He still wore the scarf, probably out of habit at that point, but he kept his head low, knowing full well that he was the reason for the strict enforcement. Meanwhile, the rest of us suffered the consequences of his love story gone wrong. To this day, I wonder what happened to that guy and his scarf. Did they make it through? Did he ever get over the betrayal of the waiter? Did he write a sequel to his diary entry? Some questions may never be answered, but one thing is for sure: never trust a waiter with your love life. Hey, if you enjoyed this video, do hit that like button and do tell me, did you enjoy the most in this story?